Welcome, everybody, to the Beacon of Light podcast tonight. And tonight I have Dr. Mary Welch with me tonight, and I'm so excited to have her. But before we start talking to her, we are going to jump into this.
I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now.
And we're back.
Hi, everyone.
Say hello, Mary. Share a little bit about who you are and where you are from.
Yes, I'm Dr. Mary Welch. I'm from the Detroit, Michigan area, so definitely looking for some spring weather here. And I met April on a journey to write our books together. So it's been an active journey.
It definitely has. It has been that active journey. Well said. Well said. So as you can see, we have Dr. Mary Welch here, and she is an author of 4, I know that is true, 4 books, and her journey within this started from an event, and as sudden as the event was, it was not sudden as well. So can you share with us a little bit about this journey and what propelled you into writing your 4 books?
Sure. So my daughter, Susie, she was 31. She had a lifetime of health issues. And so we were in and out of the hospitals, and the two of us were very, very close. And she unfortunately lost her battle and died from an infection that she got back in 2017. So, gosh, it's hard to believe it's coming up on 5 years, June 1st. It's crazy. So my journey, how it started, was with that catastrophic experience. She had always been sick. We knew it was a possibility, but you're never, ever, ever ready. And you shouldn't have to bury a child. It's not the dynamic, the normal dynamic, right? So, how did I start my journey of writing? I was a broken woman. I was seeing a good therapist, and she told me I had a great outlook and one that would help many other people, and that I needed to write my story. And I laughed at her. I said, "Are you crazy? I am a broken woman." I said, "No, there's nothing was right at that time." And she said I had to write my book. And I did. And so I wrote about my grief journey. My journey is different from anybody else's on this planet, including everybody that knew my darling daughter, my husband, her siblings, everybody. Everybody's grief journey is different. And so just small segments of what I learned, what I did, how I looked at it, with some couple questions for thought. And that's about all you could ever understand in those days of grief, is 1 or 2 pages, maybe. But as I wrote my book, I realized that perspective was different. And so that's why we're here tonight to talk about that perspective.
That's right. The perspective on things, and you'll see running down on the ticker, this is not the name of a book necessarily, but it is a philosophy and understanding of what Dr. Mary Welch has deep in her heart. To look at life as a cup half full, as opposed to half empty. So share with us a little bit how this perspective, keeps you going every day.
Yeah. So I wrote about the 4 aspects of positive reflection. And I talked from a grief perspective of losing someone, but we all grieve every day. We grieve every stage of our life. From grade school to high school, something's different. From high school to college, or getting married, or getting divorced, or, having your children. All those things are milestones that we have, that the past is different from our present, which is different from our future. And so there's 4 R's for positive reflection. The first one is we need to remember. So it could be you lost a job, a house, a pet. I'm going to talk from the perspective of losing my child. And so travel that journey with me. So we remember. So was Susie always on this pedestal up here? Was she always perfect? Was I always on this pedestal over here? And was I always perfect? Oh, no. And we have to remember that, because if we're always idolizing someone, it's not a true reflection. So we have to remember the good, the bad, and the indifferent. Didn't matter. And so one of the things I remember is Susie told me she wanted to be just like me. She wanted to be my mini me. And I laughed at her and said, why? And she said, because you help everybody. Everybody looks to you. Everybody wants Mama Mary in their life. All my friends, everybody I know. And I said, honey, you're me to the 10th degree. You're up here already on that pedestal. And she laughed and I laughed. But we both had kind souls, and that's what it was really saying. So the second one is to reflect. So what impact did I have on Susan, and what impact did Susie have on me? So I mentioned that I wrote my book. There's a section in it that are all poems. 2 sections, one from Susie and one from me. Now, the book was written after she passed. And my therapist read them and she's like, did Susie write this? Did you write this? And I said, well, I wrote it. I wrote it from what she used to say to me, how she felt, what I thought she would say. And I said, so they came very easy to me. And people will say, God, that sounds just like Susie. That's how much time we spent together. So what impact did she have on me when I reflect? Big time. We were together 24/7 many times in the hospital for months at a time. What impact did I have on her? Well, she's my mini me. Well, I'm not have to say anything more, right? So I went for my doctorate degree and she was in the hospital and she was so upset. I said, oh no, you get the first reading. And I did my whole spiel for her. And she's like, felt so honored that she heard it first. And then she was the first phone call afterwards to say, hey, I got it. Right? So you make your good moments. So the third one is the hardest. It's the hardest. We need to recreate. So grief is like a tsunami. It's got these big waves and they just keep coming in, crashing on you. And you can't breathe. You can't stand up. You can't catch your breath. And it keeps coming and coming. Well, eventually, just like the tsunami, it calms down. The waves come in, and now you can catch your feet before it knocks you down again, right? And it knocks you down again. But then eventually, it becomes even smaller until it becomes a ripple. And that little ripple on the steady water can knock you on your butt. It's just as big as that tsunami wave when it hits. And so I tell people I do grief facilitation, helping others on their journey because others helped me. And I tell them that wave, it just comes less frequent with time. It's not that it's any easier. It never gets easier. But it's how we look at it, that perspective. If we're always waiting for the crash, we're going to stay in that boom, 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 boom waves. If we try to look elsewhere at other things, we change that perspective to be the cup is half full instead of always half empty. Our perspective flips. So when I talk about recreate, a lot of people will say it's your new normal, which sounds terrible. I want the old way. But as I started earlier, when we graduated, when we got married, when we had babies, those were all new milestones. If we read a book, not all of the parties are in chapter 1. They come in and out of the book. Some stay steady. They're always there. And some come, and then you don't hear anything more about them. And some come later on in the book. And so I liken grief to they're always a main character. Always, right? But they're just not in this chapter. So when you think about your worst what if, could have, should have, this side of my brain just it can drive me nuts. And I'll tell you my worst what if. What if I'd argued with the doctor? Would it have made a difference? This side of my brain over here says, oh, Mary, how many doctors did you see? How many hospitals did you go to? Didn't you fire doctors? Didn't you take nurses off the staff? Didn't you? Yes. But I'm still got all this noise up here, right? And if I let that noise get a hold of me, if I'm standing up and look at my feet, that's the rabbit hole of despair. And it's not a nice place. It can go right down there. And you can live there for a minute, an hour, a day, a week. Some people live there all the time. That depression is so heavy. They can't come up for air. So find your special people, call them, and just tell them to tell you a funny story. Something to make you laugh a minute, just to break that heaviness. Change the perspective.
Very true. Very true.
If you look at your hand, in the palm of your hand, and you put it up like you're waving at somebody, you can't really see the palm of your hand unless you're looking in a mirror or computer. But if you put that special person in the palm of your hand, and if you're having a bad day, you just tilt your head and your hand, and your loved one will be right there smiling at you. And my Susie's in the palm of my hand, and she says, oh, come on, Mama, you got this. I laugh every time. I flip the perspective. So that fourth one is really it's got 3 prongs to it. We need to take care of ourselves. It's relate. We take care of ourselves. The second one is we help other people. How do we get them out of that tsunami water, right? And the third one is we help our community. So what do we do in our community? So for me, it's a little hard to do that self-care sometimes. I admit it. I help others, my books, my speaking, my being a good friend, all good things. My community, I started a nonprofit in my daughter's honor. It's called Susie Q's Kids. So I provide comfort bags to kids in need. So my daughter's legacy lives on. I talk about her every day. Her good work goes on through me and through others involved. And one of our taglines is kids helping kids. So I'm trying to get kids involved in packaging and shopping and talking. And maybe I can improve their mental health a little bit, their outlook, their perspective. And in the package of a kind bag going to another child that's in a hospital or a shelter or a foster care situation or that's grieving another child. And so, what's my perspective? When I started, I told you about my daughter died. Well, how could I find anything good from that? You tell me. Did I?
I believe so. There's so much help and good that comes forward with a good deed. And finding yourself through the service of others is truly impactful in so many ways. And the perspective does flip. And there are the ups and downs, but they, like you said, become less and less. And maybe just that ripple, and then maybe some smooth sailing for a bit till the next thing comes around. But the perspective of standing up, knowing that the cup can be half full, is just hopeful, right? Very powerful. So, Mary, with all of these things, and thank you so much for sharing this from your heart. I noticed something maybe above your heart tonight as well. Can you share with us what's dangling on you?
Ah, so I'm going to take it off so you can see it a little better, maybe. So these are little beads that I have. That's my mom and my daughter Susie on the button. Okay. But I have these beads, and I thank you for asking me that, because I call them remembrance beads, and they're really a story starter. And so, as you look at your string of beads, you assign a different story to each bead. Some of those stories you will share, and some of them are just for you. They make you feel good, right? But the story that you share should be one that's funny, something that makes the other person laugh, because you're talking about a loved one. And when we talk about death, sometimes it makes other people uncomfortable. And they don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. And so they just don't say anything, or they're silent. And that's even worse, because we miss our family, our friends, and we want them remembered, right? So I'll share my story. This big bead here reminds me of my mom. If you met my mom, she was 92, almost 93 when she passed. She had a laugh that was just precious. She would just you would come into a room and you knew exactly where she was at. You knew exactly, she was the belle of the ball. She had everybody in her hand. She was just that magical, right? But I have to warn you, because if you're a man, if you were 4 or 98, I don't care. My mom was going to hit on you. She was a big flirt. So that was a funny story, right?
Exactly. All about's the biggest one too. Because if that's part of that personality, that should shine first. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very good. It is great to assign the humor to it. And as you're just discussing that, looking at ways, I have one child, one daughter, who is really asking me all the time, and I need to be more conscious of this, but it's really interesting. She's like, tell me a funny story about myself. Tell me about the time when, tell me about, and she wants to know more and more stories. And sometimes she'll ask, my brain is on a list this long. I'm thinking about XYZ, all this stuff. My hands are in dirty dishwasher. I'm folding underwear. Huh? Like my brain just switch over. But I mean, I sometimes at night I will think, gosh, what could I say? What was funny? And I have to quiet the other side of my head of all the things that rapidly have to happen and just remember the funny times. And then those discussions around the table, usually at dinner on a Sunday, is when both of the family gets together, and of course on holidays. And then consciously putting those down and sharing that keeps us there longer at the table and keeps us in those remembrance. So if anything were to happen, we would definitely have lots of beads to add to our remembrance. But even if things don't happen, we then, as we gather together, can still share the stories. Just like one story you shared with me about a certain uncle and a certain door with a plate of food.
So Susie was sick and she was laying on the couch and she had a rag on her head. There was a lot of people going in and out of the door wall, going outside, and she would talk to them as they walked by, but she didn't feel good. And her Uncle Jim happened to have a full plate of food, and he was walking out the door and he talked to her, and he didn't know someone had shut the door. So when he got to the door wall, exactly. Susie, that happened long ago, but every time Susie would just be sitting there, she'd start laughing. I say, "What's so funny?" And she'd say, "Uncle Jim in the door wall." And so I'm positive there's a door wall in heaven waiting for Uncle Jim to walk through it.
And those are the moments. Those moments are given as relief. Those moments are given as such fun. An amazing woman once wrote that crying, it's hard. It makes my nose swell. It makes my eyes feel terrible. It gives me a headache. So I'd rather just laugh. And you think, yeah, sometimes to break it, you do need to laugh. And exercising that technique when things are super serious and in the moment, sometimes you just have to pull something out and just do a little funny, and it breaks the ice, breaks the tension, gives perspectives, brings it all down to go, wait a minute, I think we're okay. It was just a moment. Let's move forward here. So yeah, agreed.
So laughter is a great thing. So when my daughter had her first anniversary, I worried about everybody. What are they going to do? What's going to happen? And I talked to my son and I said, "What are you going to do?" He says, "Oh, we got tickets to go see a comedian because I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate Susie than to laugh." I thought, that's awesome. I called her sister who lives out in California. I said, "Hey, are you going to be by yourself? Are you going to be okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're going to a comedy castle. We're going to celebrate Susie by laughing." And I'm like, "You guys rock. You rock." Right? And so,
Well.
yeah. So for your daughter, though, those beads don't have to wait for grief.
Right.
I've had people put them in special moments for a wedding, right? And weave it into their bouquet. So it was their engagement story. So for your daughter, you could get a whole bunch of just little beads and let them string it. And you tell them to tell you the special stories that they're putting on their string. And every once in a while, you can ask them, "Hey, what's that purple story? Hey, what's that pink story?" It's a way for them to share the story. You don't have to do it all the time.
Oh, I love that. Delegation, man, right there. String your beads, babies, string your beads. I love it.
So
So
this is my teddy bear. Can you just imagine a child that doesn't feel good just getting such a cuddly teddy bear or a warm blanket? We know we make a difference.
That's very true. So what in our last moments here together would you like to share with everyone out there tonight?
Just be yourself. It's okay. I wrote a journal and I asked 2 things in the journal every day. And so if you can think about this, you'll be okay. Number 1, what did you do for yourself today? Number 2, what did you do for somebody else? And if it's all about, I did this for this one, and I did this and this and this, and you took no time out of your day for yourself, then you need to go in the bathroom and read a book, go for a walk, get out that favorite cup of coffee, turn on whatever you want on the TV for a minute, whatever it takes. Take it 15, 20 minutes for yourself. If it was all about you, well, then we are very selfish. So then you need to pick up the phone and call a friend. You need to go next door and ask your neighbor if they need something. You need to take the dog for a walk. You need to do something because it's all about balance. This is no good. This is no good. We have to balance. So those are the 2 questions I'll leave you with from my journal that said, what did you do for you and what did you do for someone else? Would you agree?
I agree. I definitely agree. And that brings us now to those ending moments where we feel that hope and understanding in the Beacon of Light podcast, how this can help you along your way. Dr. Mary, tell us the 4 books that you have written, the names of them, and we'll drop them in the links here below. And thank you, everybody, for coming this evening.
Okay. So I wrote Journey into the Looking Glass, Finding Hope After the Loss of a Loved One. That's my adult grief book. Journey into the Looking Glass, The 4 Aspects of Positive Reflection. And that's my journal. And those are woven throughout all of my books. My 3rd book is a children's grief book. Takes all the questions my grandchildren ask, and Angel Susie narrates it. So it's Susie Q's Positive Reflections, my special angel. And then the 4th one is a coloring book that goes into all of my bags. And it's Susie Q's Positive Reflections, Good Characteristics to Model. And so if I was going to give kids something to color, it was going to be a good characteristic and positive saying. Maybe it'll rub off on them a little bit. Maybe it'll make their day a little better. And then my nonprofit is Susie Q's Kids. And that's on the bottom of your screen. And I'd love it if you could check us out.
Thank you so much, Mary. You guys have heard a wealth of information. Don't let the tsunami knock you down. Stand up, get a perspective, maybe move out of the wave a little bit, grab a dinghy, hang on. There's lots of people out there to help. Remember the 4 aspects of positive reflection. Go through those things. Remember you're not alone, and it is okay to be yourself. Thank you, Mary.
Remember that funny story, okay?